Today's show, it's a listener summit. Locked On Blazers listeners join the program to talk about what they've liked from the season, the growth of the young guys, and what's next for this team. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trailblazers, your daily Portland Trailblazers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trailblazers reporter, Mike Richmond, listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts. Today's show is a very special one. It's a listener summit, our second ever listener summit. 3 listeners to the program are going to join the show, and we're going to talk Blazers present, Blazers future, what fans want to see, what listeners and fans want to see from this team in the offseason, what their expectations are for next season, and what they've seen from the young guys during a whole bunch of losing here down the stretch for the Blazers. It's a ton of fun. So let's get into it. Joining me now on the Locked On Blazers Listener Summit, listener Scott. Scott, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, living the dream, living the dream. We're just going to let's chat big picture stuff here.
Yep.
Are you watching the games? Are you still watching the games?
I am watching them, not as intense about it. Like, I can hear other things happening in the house now.
Yeah. Okay. So you weren't as like in November when they were bad, you were like locked in, but they've kind of weaned you off, and now you're still tuning in.
Yeah, totally tuning in. In November you still have a fool's hope.
Right.
Just like most teams have a fool's hope and most fans have a fool's hope. But yeah, I'm relatively locked in, but I have kids and they take my attention anyways.
Exactly.
So I'm letting them have more of my attention for those 2 hours where they would otherwise get like 50% of it.
Yeah, well, it's like, sorry, I gotta watch Jalen Horde. Okay, Daddy's busy. He has to watch Vit Krejci.
No, Jalen Horde, Blazers legend
with a 2020 game against his former team. Saved the Blazers incredible tank off. What have you appreciated about this stretch? Obviously, there's other things, but let's say post-Ant shutdown, post-All-Star, post-Ant shutdown. What have you appreciated about this stretch for the Blazers?
The rookies. And it's kind of crazy when you think about it, because we have a pretty good crop of rookies right now. 4
pretty
rookies,
decent.
Keon and Trendon and Greg and Brandon Williams. And that's like 4 of the 8 players who are actually signed to contracts or 2-way contracts.
Well, we'll be involved next year. Yeah, right. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And like, I think it's not, depending how the summer goes, it's not unreasonable to think at least one of them, maybe even 2 of them, will carve out like a 9th or 10th spot in the rotation.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing Keon playing, and same with Brandon Williams, just because they have a lot of guards. If Josh Hart and Ant and Dame are available, it's hard to see a guard playing. But I would say Trendon Watford has an outside chance to be part of the rotation. And Greg Brown, he was not an NBA player when the season started, or close to it. And he has taken real leaps.
Yeah.
If there is something to be made from this like stretch of Blazers basketball, that has quite frankly frustrated me to no end, because it's just like, what is the point of this? What are we doing here?
Well, May 17th will be the point of it.
Exactly. When they get to draft, when they have the 6th and 9th pick in the NBA draft, and it's like, oh, I get it. Or sorry, Blazer fans, let me give you the 1st and 9th pick in the NBA draft.
Yeah, the 1st and 9th pick, yes. Or the 2nd or 3rd, I'd be happy with that.
Yeah, anywhere in the top 3, they'll be in a good spot. Do you want them to use both their draft picks, or do you want them to wheel and deal?
I want them to think hard about that 2nd draft pick, that potential New Orleans draft pick. I definitely want them to use their 1st draft pick, just because I think there has to be a bridge between now and later. Yeah. And there are some decent players, even if they stay at 6, that I think whoever you're going to trade for, I think the upside for those guys for this draft class might be reasonably higher than what you might be able to trade for. Definitely that 2nd pick. I wouldn't hate it if they kept it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. But if you're trying to do this thing with Damian Lillard on the roster, right? Like he's 32 years old. I don't think, I think maybe not outside, and maybe here people still think Dame's really good, but I think there's a perception that he's like bad now. I think he's still going to be one of the very good offensive players in the league next year. I'm willing to wager. I'm not going to actually bet on it, but shout out to betonline.net. But I am a believer that Damian Lillard is going to be an offensive force next season. Yes. And that means that they'll have a baseline of competence, which means that adding vets and not rookies, as you mentioned, they already have 4 rookies, or we'll have 4 second-year guys in the roster next year, including Didi Louzada. I think there's a case to be made for adding a vet to try to compete. But I'm with you. If you get the 5th pick in the draft, you don't trade that for somebody good. You try to get the best. You pick 6th or you pick 3rd or whatever it might be. You try to get the best possible player, because even good teams desperately need rookies. It's incredibly important to building. So yeah, I'm with you on that.
That's the beauty of what they're trying to do, is put themselves in the position to be able to have both.
Yeah.
Exactly. And on May 17th, if they don't have both, there's going to be a massive letdown.
Oh man!
Because then the argument of whether or not to keep their own draft pick, that 6 or top 4, 6, 7 or top 4, those are going to get louder.
Yeah.
And I'd be a little worried that they would seriously consider trading the number 6 pick.
Me too. And particularly because Damian Lillard is going to have a big voice in what happens. Yeah. And when you're asking Dame, do you want this proven NBA commodity or this 19-year-old? I'm going to assume he's going to say proven NBA commodity, please.
Totally. And that's what you live with when you have a top 10 or 15 player in the league.
Right.
And nobody is like, in 2 or 3 years, no one's going to remember the stretch between December and May. They're not going to look back and be, hey, remember that time they tanked? Like, that'll be the extent of the conversation.
Unless they draft Jabari Smith Jr. and he's like an MVP.
But then Jabari will be the
right. Good point.
Jabari will be the line.
Right.
The line won't be, oh, remember all those times they lost back-to-back to Houston and they lost 4 times to OKC. Like, the minutia of it's going to get swept under the rug.
Absolutely.
And the thing that we can look forward to is Dame trying to prove that he's a legit top 10 player again.
Yeah.
And if we have that guy, then you kind of just have to live with whatever he thinks is the next best step. And I'm willing to do that.
Do you think they're going to be good again next year? Like, what's your faith in them being, let's say, like above the play-in range next season?
I was going to ask what your definition of good is.
Better than 6th or something like that. Better than 7th. Out of a secured playoff spot. Like this time next year where they're securely in the playoffs and not, it doesn't matter what happens in the last 5 games or something.
I've given it a lot of thought. I think they can. I don't think it's a guarantee they make the playoffs next year at all. There's a ton of good teams. There's a lot of teams that had injuries and unfortunate circumstances that are, if you assume they're going to be whole. And then there's some young teams that are going to get better, presumably.
Yep. But New Orleans is going to be better. The Lakers are going to be, I have no idea. The Clippers are probably going to be a lot better next year.
Yeah.
There's some teams that are out of the playoff picture right now that are going to take a jump. And then there's the Minnesotas and the San Antonios that are kind of on the rise. So yeah, I would say no guarantee for sure.
Yeah. Well, there's the Minnesota, San Antonios, and Memphises who are now in the playoffs, who weren't in the playoffs when the Blazers were in the playoffs 2 years ago.
Right.
So yeah, I think they have a reasonable chance to be a top 6 team. I think that's what I'm hoping for. And I'll be happy if they are. And if they add, I guess if they have this team and they add a Jeremy Grant or a similar decent starter, and Dame can be even what we saw at his best this year, then I think they are a top end play-in team, bottom half, top 6 team. I think that's reasonable. I do think that they probably have a better chance of being in the lottery again than winning a first round series.
Yeah, that's probably true.
but this is the ride we're on, and you just enjoy. Like, I'm enjoying this part of the season, and I'll enjoy whatever happens next season. It's just that's the, I mean, I could only hope that I'm in your position that you've been in the last couple of days. with your team, I can only hope that I'm on the losing end of a championship game someday.
Yeah, I've joked. I have a really good friend who's a Minnesota sports fan. And I've joked with him. I'm like, do you know that your team can play the last game of the season?
Yeah. No,
I'm
totally.
like, even if you lose, do you know your team could play the final game of the year? And
Yeah.
it's, he's like, hey, the Lynx, man, the Lynx. Which is true,
No.
dynasty in the middle 2000s. So shout out to the
Yes.
Lynx. Scott, thank you so much for joining us. I hope for your sake that the Blazers get a chance to lose a championship here in the near future. And wouldn't it be nice?
Lose another one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would that's what I keep my fingers crossed for.
There you go. Thanks so much, man.
Thanks, Mike.
Today's show was brought to you by betonline.net, the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your sports action. More lines, more props, more odds than any other place. So if you want to bet on the end of the NBA season, the play-in, or the playoffs, you're going to find odds and lines and props on all of those games every single day leading up to the end of the season. It's also Masters weekend. So if you want to bet on your boy Eldrick Woods down there in Augusta, Georgia, you can do that too. And any other sport, not just basketball and golf, you'll find all the odds, all the props, all the lines. So go take advantage of it today. That's Bet Online, where the games start. All right. Let's keep it rolling with this listener summit. Next, we're going to hear from listener Rachel, who's got some fun insights on what's next with the Blazers. And joining me now, listener Rachel. You can find her at PDX_Rachel on Twitter. Rachel, how are you doing?
Hey, good. The sun came out today. I'm happy.
There you
go.
You? I'm doing all right. I lost a light during this record. So for listeners who are watching this on YouTube, the studio did get a little bit darker, but hopefully we'll recover the light before the end of the week. So other than having just the tech world conspire against me, I am doing wonderfully. When you're watching this, well, first of all, and I'm asking everybody this, you still watching the Blazer games? Are they still drawing your attention for 2.5 hours, a couple nights a week?
No, honestly, not watching most of the games. I am a season ticket holder, so I did go to 5 games in the last 2 weeks or something like that.
There you go. Yeah. So you've seen a bunch.
We did not stay till the end on all of them either. I attend with a kid, and when he's tired, we go. So yeah, I admit we're not tuning in.
Hey, listen, they're not giving you a lot of reason to tune in. They have chosen a direction, and that direction is not exactly like, please watch till the end. They're selling you hope for the future, not high level entertainment in the present. I'm curious, how old is the child that you attend Blazer games with?
He's 11.
And so what excites an 11-year-old boy about the Portland Trail Blazers?
He actually knows every single player. He has since he was 4 years old, and he first recited the roster in order by jersey number. But he actually loves the young guys. He every year, Damian Lillard's always his number one. Damian Lillard has been number one since he was about 1 year old. So he doesn't know life without him.
Right.
But he always has an underdog player that's his other favorite player. So, there have been some tears this year because he loved Norman Powell, and then he loved Dennis Smith Jr. And he cried when Dennis Smith Jr. got waived. But he also loves Trendon so much. We actually took advantage of the lull in fandom this year and bought cheap tickets down to the 100 level for his birthday. I'm pretty sure Trendon heard him yelling his name.
Well, it's not too loud in there.
It was unfortunately the game Trendon got hurt.
Oh no! Were you guys on that basket? Were you on that end, or were you?
No, we were at the other. We were right at the other basket.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. So, and luckily the news came out pretty quickly that he wasn't really as badly hurt as we all thought.
Right.
But
I wonder with so an obsessive 11-year-old about sports, who was an obsessive 4-year-old about sports, very close to home for me. That sounds like a lot like what I might've been. I kind of taught myself to read so I could read the sports page back when newspapers were a thing that people read every day. So that was like, I was like, I know that my dad reads the sports page. I want it after him. I need to learn how to read so I can read the box scores. And I was pretty young to do that. So I love that. That really strikes me in the whatever heartstrings. How do you explain to a 6th grader, 5th grader that their team is losing on purpose? Like, how do you square the intentional losing?
My kid actually really gets it.
There you go.
So he's a couple times been in the stands this season going tank. So while we would never, it's a weird thing for me. I grew up as a Mariners fan, kind of similar experience to you. I would actually draw my own version of the sports page, trying to recreate a winning team.
I love it.
But he gets it. He looks at the standings. He now checks the tankathon and sees like what our spots could be. He got really into draft prospects and made his own draft board with, we've got a whole like cork board with like little Post-it notes with guys' names and stats written on them.
I'm loving this.
So it's turned into like a home, kind of he's not homeschooled, but it's turned into kind of a research project.
I love that.
So that's kind of the angle we've taken, is just like going into looking at prospects. I'm taking him to the Nike Hoop Summit on Friday.
Awesome.
That was one of his birthday presents. So he's just getting kind of more into that side of like,
he's a scout. Now he's gone from Blazer fan to scout. Now he's got to scout the future.
He's scouting guys for the next few years.
Tell him, you have my contact info. Tell him to reach out if he's got a good lead on someone who I should talk about on the show. Cause I will. I'll give him that.
He's been begging for his own Twitter, but I don't think we're not quite there yet.
I don't know.
So.
No, it's not a good place for anyone. Certainly not, 5th and 6th grader. What excites you about this team? Particularly, maybe not now, but now it's fine. But what excites you about sort of the next step, the next evolution of the Trailblazers?
I love the young guys. For me, like a lot of my fandom isn't necessarily focused on having to win a championship. To me, that's not why I follow the team.
Amen.
It's,
a lot of good ways to have a good season without winning a championship. I'm with you, Rachel.
Yeah, I would say most teams don't win.
29 of them lose. I agree.
And we've had a really great run of really fun playoff years. I mean, really miserable playoff years as well. But some fun runs. And I've enjoyed those years. And I look forward to getting back to it and to having my hopes raised every year that it's going to be the year we might take it all the way. I love watching the development of the young guys. I love watching Dame lead and be a mentor. And I've sort of recognized that he kind of hit a burnout point.
He doesn't look as engaged anymore. He does not. He looks like someone who's ready for the season to be over. And I say, Dame, welcome to the club.
Yeah, but I hope it seems like he's kind of recognized that in himself and is taking a step back, and hopefully is going to come back kind of refreshed and ready to do that emotional pouring in that he does
right
every year. So hopefully he's ready to do that again. It's been one of those things that I've kind of secretly been worried about for years, just like how long is that sustainable? Just like
right, he's filled up a lot of cups. He's filled up a lot of cups in his life. How much more can he pour into this? Particularly when you start to contemplate it's like NBA mortality. It's not your life, right? Like he's going to live a long and fun life when he's done with this. He's going to make $400 million off the NBA. He's going to do what he wants to when he's done with this. And I'm excited for that stage of his career. But there is a contemplating your sort of professional existence that I think can wear on guys. And I think last year I think last July we saw him battle that more publicly than we ever have, when he was like, I haven't made up my mind what the future is going to be. And it was like, oh, wow, we haven't heard him talk like this before. But I think that he came to peace with whatever that was in the last few months, and the way he talked about the team when he came back in the fall, and the fact that he's still here talking about the future of this team. When he's talking about Joe Ingles and to Chris Haynes, he's saying, oh, we got Ingles on the team now. It's like he's invested in the future again.
Yeah.
So I'm with you, Rachel. I think there's reason to be optimistic that he's going to come back and be same old Dame, both basketball wise and all the soft stuff that makes him so special.
I do think too, the team had started to rely on him to play that role, and they've now, I think, put in some staff that has taken on some more of that sort of teaching and mentoring in a different way. Like I love following, like I follow Coach Eddie on all of her social media. I think like her and some of the assistant coaches are doing some of that pouring in and doing some of that that mentoring and building those relationships. So maybe that takes a little load off of him as well.
Yeah, I think there's something to that, right? Like just anyone who works a job, that if you are constantly managing all your coworkers, that it takes a lot out of you. that is like just a normal part of professional life. And Damian Lillard, in addition to having that responsibility, also has to play something like 100 basketball games every year. So it's a lot for him. One more before you get out of here. I know that you've got the draft board up at home. Do you want the Blazers to use both picks? Do you want 2 rookies, or do you want them to wheel and deal and all that stuff?
It's tough. That's a discussion we've been having around the house. Definitely want them to use that first pick. Definitely hope it's high so that they have, some real choice there, because I think they have to pick somebody that's not a development project. It has to be somebody who can kind of hit the ground running.
Yep.
So it's got to be some, it might expand outside of that top 3, but it's got to be someone that's up there. The second piece, I don't know. I kind of am, I always have this hope that they've got some more cards up their sleeve as far as what contacts they're making. Maybe it's Jeremy Grant, but maybe there's something else out there as other teams are quietly imploding, or as other teams don't do as well as they want in the playoffs. So
things change. I agree. Quickly.
We at least have some flexibility.
That's the F word. That's a dangerous word to use here. I think you're right. Like I agree with that 100%. I think the Portland pick, you want it to be as high as possible and get a really good player, and you want that player to be named Jamari Smith Jr. And with the other pick, if there's somebody you like I'm not a big draft guy. I'm learning along with everyone over the next couple months. But if there's someone you like, you go for it. And if there's not, I think you try to go get veteran help. I think we are simpatico on that logic there, because I agree.
If there's a veteran that Dame would be happy playing with, if we can get a great forward from anywhere.
Exactly. Whatever that looks like. Yeah. An NBA quality starting power forward on the team, sign him up.
Exactly.
Awesome. Rachel, thank you so much for joining the show. This was a ton of fun.
Thank you.
Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. And we're still continuing our listener summit. Next up, we're talking with my man, Ben, the king of the over-unders. Let's see what Ben has to say. Joining me now, listener Ben, at Ben_Sprouse on Twitter, the king of the over-unders. Ben, how you doing?
Not too bad, Mike. What's going on?
Oh, not much. I've owed you this for 2 years. You have sent me some really good preseason over-unders. Just basically created content for the show. So I probably should have sent you like $20, but instead I got you on here for the listener summit, our second ever listener summit. And I'm hitting you with over-unders here. So that's what we're going to do to close out the show. If listeners, if you don't know, like I just said, Ben has just hit me on Twitter with a couple over-unders, like a long list of them, and we've done full shows of Ben's lists. So he's hooked it up with some great over-unders, some great prediction stuff that we have mostly gotten wrong, like pretty consistently gotten wrong, particularly this year when things went a little sideways. So I got some over-unders for you. First over under is 1.5 games you'll watch the remainder of the season. Over or under?
Unfortunately, it's probably going to be over.
Wow.
Too much of a diehard, unfortunately. So I will probably catch the last ones just because I love basketball. But yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to pound the over on that one.
Yeah, that's tough. That is tough. I mean, it's the Pelicans. That game is kind of interesting, and I guess the final home game is worth watching because they'll do some fan appreciation stuff. So you have a sickness, but I too share that sickness. So I'm going to watch all of them for a variety of reasons. Okay. Over under 22.5 points per game for Anfernee Simons next year.
I think that's a good line. I'm going to go with the under though. Assuming that they're able to bring in someone who is kind of like a pseudo third option, just like him. And maybe he'll even be a second option next year. I'm not really sure, but I think there's going to be someone coming in, at least, hopefully that is going to gobble up a few of his shots. And so I think I'm going to pound the under and have him sitting at right about 20, which would be awesome. But
yeah, I was going to say, I would probably move it to 19.5. Where would you go on 19.5?
I would hit the over.
All right, there we go. We go.
I think that's a good line.
22.5 is what you gave me for CJ this year. I looked up what you gave me for CJ. So I was giving the Ant as the CJ facsimile. Over under 27.5 starts for Josh Hart next season.
Man, I'm gonna pound the under on that one because I'm kind of hoping that they start Nas actually. Mainly just because I like a little bit more of what he brings, although it's been a little bit tough to gauge Josh and kind of project him for next year just because he's had this kind of expanded role since he's been on the squad. So, but yeah, I'm hoping for the under because I'd like to see Nas in that role. In a perfect world, I'd like to see them both coming off the bench, but I'm going to pound under on that one.
I agree with you. In a perfect world, your first guys off the bench are Nassir Little and Josh Hart, and then you're probably a pretty good team. But that means that you have like a real NBA starting caliber small forward. And the path from here in April to there in August is it's a dicey one. It's going to be, it's a long way to go. I don't think he will start. I don't think he would so that's going to start. That's why it's like about 28, right? So he's not, I don't think you think it's something like half the games, maybe with a little health, he's the, health issues. He's the first guy in there, but I think I would lean with you on the under. I think, I was trying to set these lines where I thought they were, but I think I would lean with you. Over under 7.5 assists per game for Damian Ollie Lillard Sr. next year.
I'm going to go with the over. I think, again, trying to be optimistic as well. I think hopefully we're going to have some more pieces around him that are a little bit more complimentary next year. And he's been right at that number or right around there for the last couple of years. And he's had, some guys that gobble up shots and do a lot of stuff on their own. So I think if Cronin's able to put the right pieces around him, be it a Grant or whoever, someone that can more spot up and play a little bit more complimentary, then I think he can be over on that one.
Yeah, Ant. If you just sub in Ant for CJ, Ant is more comfortable as a catch and shoot guy than CJ was. They're relatively similar in terms of I've said overall skill set. If you were to just paint with a broad brush, but CJ wants to catch and cook. I mean, I watch him play with the Pelicans. He still wants to catch and cook. Not much has changed, but it's he's averaging more assists there just because the personnel is a little bit different. I will go under probably on 7.5 assists for Dame, but I think it's going to be 7.3. This is if I had said it at 7, I'd probably take the over because I think this is right in this range.
Yeah, I think it answer number 2 also and it's going to depend on what he does with his game. If he starts going to the cup more, like we all kind of want or would like to see a little bit more, then that might eat away at some of Dame's assists. But if he keeps spotting up like he typically has been playing off of Dame, then we might see more assists there. I guess we'll see. We'll see.
That's the interesting balance, right? Is you want Ant to be himself and you want him to continue to grow and be an attacker, but you also just it's how the NBA works. You just want your players to fit next to your best player. You say what is Dame best at? Okay. He wants to spread the floor and run a pick and roll. You kind of just want guys who can do that with him. Obviously you want everyone to grow. And sort of the idea was Chauncey was going to come and change all these things. I don't think we really saw that. I think this year was incredible, basically impossible to judge what Chauncey Billups is as a coach, but some of the basic math of the NBA is like, what does your best player do well? Who complements that? And so I think you're right. Like maybe you see Ant, I don't regress isn't the right word, but maybe you see him fit in better as a spacer. And then when those minutes when Dame isn't off the floor, you're like, okay, go, like be yourself. Yeah, that one's really curious to me. The whole assist thing is really curious to me because the Blazers were, like dead last in assists and they were like improved to 26th.
Right.
But I mean, again, it's like this season is such a weird one. So I have no idea how to judge it. Over under 110 made threes next year for Nassir Little. And because he didn't get to prep on this, I'll give you this one. He made 51 in 42 games this year. So will he make 110 next season?
I'm going to say yes.
There we go. Optimism.
I'm going to go with the over on that one as well. Hoping that he starts at the three, or I should say, assuming that he starts at the three. It seems like they're trying to target a four, so that would naturally, I guess, be either him or Josh Hart at the three there.
Right.
And hopefully he's working on his jump shot. I don't know how the shoulder is going to hold up, but yeah, I'm going to hit the over on that one, but barely. I think that's a good one.
It was 109.5 is a lot. I had it at 100 and I was like, no, he's going to scream past the over at 100. So we got to bump it up to 110 or 109.5 is what I should have set it at. But you're the over under expert. I'm merely benefit from your insights here. Okay. Over under 1.5 rookies on the roster next season.
I'm going to go with the over, because I think they have a couple or at least one second round pick.
They have 2 second rounders. So that's I'm a little bit, I kind of think they won't use those because, or like, they won't use them on players who play because they'll just get too crowded with young guys since they have so many young guys on the roster. But I guess between here and draft day, some of those guys might change. But so yeah, let's change it up a little bit. Over under 1.5 first round rookies on the roster.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the under on that one because I think if they get the Pelicans pick, they're going to move it. And if I'm also not sure they're going to get the Pelicans pick to begin with. So, I think, it'll be interesting to see where everything lands. And I don't really trust the Wolves actually. So I'm a little bit thinking
they've been really bad on defense. They can't guard anyone anymore.
Yeah,
which
terrible.
So are you think the Pels are going to make the playoffs?
I don't know, man. I think I think CJ would be a little bit scary to go against in a one-game playoff if you're not a super experienced playoff team. I mean, we've seen him, and he's done it in the tournament before he got to the league, and also a few times in the league. So I'm not saying yes or no, but I feel better about the Pels than I do about the Wolves, just slightly though.
Yeah, bad shot makers are so good in single game elimination tournament situations, and him and Brandon Ingram are bad shot makers. They're dudes that's just like, hey, it didn't work out. Our plan did not work out. Can you bail us out? And both of those guys can really bail other teams out. They have some limitations. Their bench isn't very good. Like I like some of the Pelicans bench players, but they're not. I like Najee Marshall, but that doesn't mean he's an NBA player. It's you could appreciate guys who are like below average NBA guys. I love Jose Alvarado, but like if he's playing a bunch of minutes, you are a borderline playoff team like they are. I'm worried a little bit, quite honest. I think the Pelicans, they're straight up better than the Spurs, and they're gonna play a home game against San Antonio. They just they've lost them a couple weeks ago, 10 days ago, with DeJounte Murray and all that, but I think they're better, and it's at home. And then I think the Clippers will beat the Wolves because Norm's coming back. Norman Powell coming back tonight for my Blazers fans who haven't seen the news yet. He'll be, by the time you listen to this, I believe Norman Powell will already have played. So Norman Powell played tonight, but I think the Clippers will beat the Wolves. So now you're talking in Minnesota against the Timberwolves. And like you said, my confidence is waning in them as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Wolves are going to have to, the Pels are going to have to deal with Cat, but I don't know if JV can handle that. I think he can throw a big body on him, but it's going to be like the big men of the bigger guys of the Wolves against kind of the smaller, skinnier guys on the Pels. So it's going to be a great game if that's where we land.
If that's where we end up, it will be a fun game. Maybe we'll all go to Target Center. All Locked On Blazers listeners will pour into Target Center and spend hundreds and thousands of dollars to get us to cheer on the Blazers getting the ninth overall pick in the NBA draft. What do you want them to do with the picks? You want them? Are you a draft or are you a wheel and deal type guy?
It depends where it lands, man. That's a cop-out answer, right? But I think
it's the right answer though.
If we're top 4, and they have the opportunity to get, I mean, we just haven't had a big 4, an athletic 4 in so long. Like and we're about to have essentially a reasonable facsimile of what we've had for the last 8 years with Dame and Ant, with maybe a little more bounce at the 2. But I think I'm for them picking. I like Jabari the most, just for his length and everything, and I would love to see them pick him. But if it's outside the top 4, I'm definitely open to them trading. But not really sure for who. Like, again, like as you've said many times, we're not really moving the needle that much farther than we've been in the past.
Right.
Or at least it's going to be tough to be an actual contender, right? And so, you know, we'll see where they land. But
and how do you balance that? Do you say, okay, we probably can't be a contender, let's get a player that can be a bridge to the next whatever, the next iteration of this team? Or do you say, okay, screw it, Dame's 32, let's absolutely swing, and even though we can only hit a double, let's crush a double. Let's smoke this ball off the wall, and maybe things will work out. They'll bumble it, we'll score from second base on 2 errors. That is
we'll end up in the conference finals.
Exactly. So I think good teams still need rookies. So I think if you have 2 top 10 picks, you got to take one. But if the Blazers end up with 1 top 10 pick and it's 7th, that's where the strange debate comes in. Is the 7th overall pick, is Ben Mathurin or whatever, to throw out a name, is he the guy who changes the direction of the franchise and is like worth it, or is like trading for Christian Wood or whatever it might, that type of thing. Like what do you prioritize? I think that's the fascinating part of this summer. Because I think we know some of the other moves. I think they're going to sign Ant and sign Nurk, and then it's like filling out the rest of the roster. I am excited to see what happens.
As am I. I think it'll be fun. I think they owe it to Dame to try it again, or to try something new, because I mean, we're not signing anyone like him, and we're not typically not trading for people like him, right? So they have to capitalize on having someone that actually wants to be in Portland. So I think they should go for it.
I'm with you. Ben, thanks so much for joining the show. This was a ton of fun.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks again to Scott, Rachel, and Ben for joining the show. It was a ton of fun. This is the second one of these we've done. We've done 2 listener summits is what I'm calling these. We're bringing listeners to the podcast and get them on the show. If you want to get involved in one in the future, I just kind of decided to do these arbitrarily. I put them out on my Twitter feed. That's at Mike G. Rich on Twitter. So make sure you are following me there. I'll send out a tweet. I'll ask you if you want to be part of the show. And if you respond to the tweet, I'll do my best to get you in the show. There's a lot of popularity, so we'll definitely do these again, particularly in the offseason as big Blazers decisions comes up. I want to hear from y'all. This is your show if you were a listener. So follow me on Twitter. Come back. We'll do another listener summit. You can get involved too. In the meantime, keep listening to the show 5 days a week, available wherever you get podcasts. Appreciate you listening. Talk to you soon.